Hey everybody, Kevin here from HumboldtCraftworks. Welcome back to another episode of Woodworking with Mr. Kevin. That's me, and today we're going to continue our journey on mastering the curve. So in today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about resawing your parts. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to make ourselves a planer sled jig. It's the easiest jig in the world to make. For all of you that don't know what that is, it's how you get material from, let's say, 3/16 like we're starting out to, down to 1/8 of an inch, because most planers don't go down to 1/8 of an inch. So I'm going to show you how to build that sled, how to use the sled, and the things to look out for, because it gets a little dangerous when you take pieces down to 1/8 of an inch. They get a little squirrely. So I'm going to show all of that to you. I'm going to explain it, and I videotaped a couple of examples of what you need to do to keep yourself safe and not destroy all your wood. And after that, what we're going to do is we're going to practice loading the bag up with all our parts. And I'm going to show you how I go about shrink wrapping the parts to keep them square, adding tape to them so they don't glue themselves together. So I have to get all these parts glued up and in the bag in about 20-25 minutes. Otherwise the glue is going to dry up and it's going to be a mess. I spent about a half hour, an hour just running myself through and trying to beat the clock. And I finally got it down, but I had to modify the jig to help me do that. And I'm going to show you what I did to the jig to help me get all these pieces in a straight line, loaded in the bag and locked down in less than about 25 minutes. So after we get done practicing all that, we're actually going to glue up all 18 pieces that we have, wrap them all up, get them in the bag and glue them up, and that's mostly time-lapsed. Some of it I cut out just because it's boring. The last thing we're going to do is, after we get it bagged up, we're going to unbag everything. We'll see how it lays on the jig. I'll show you how I remove it from the jig, because sometimes you got to beat these pieces off because they're glued down. Oh my goodness. That sounded weird, didn't it? Well, anyway, we're going to remove all the parts from the jig, and then we're going to wrap them with band clamps and let them sit in the office for a while, because this could take a while. At the very end, I'm going to have a little talk about the difference between radius work and curve work, because there's a huge difference. When you have this many parts to make just 10 raised panels that are curved, that's a huge difference. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, like, hit the notification bell, all that jazz. And let's get to the video. All right. Enjoy. So now we're going to resaw all of our cherry parts into little 3/16 of an inch slivers. And before we do any bandsawing or any resawing, you always have to wax your tools, and there's a video right over here about waxing your tools. I've just changed the blade over to a nice 3/4 inch blade that's got very big teeth on it. So this is kind of a small blade for resawing, but it works, and it works for what I'm doing. I have a better one, which is right here, and you can see it's quite rusty because it's been sitting around. And the reason we're not using this blade today, and we're using this one, is because the material isn't thick enough for me to actually get all the pieces I need out of it. I need 6 rips. So each board that we have here, I need 6 rips out of. With that big ass blade on there, it won't do it. We face jointed all our pieces. We have the X's on there from all our face joining. So I marked up on everything. So this side's up. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna run this board here through the bandsaw all the way through. This is 65 inches long. And when we get done, we have a piece that looks like this. It has the X on the one side, and this side's got all of the saw kerf on it. And it's about 3/16 of an inch thick. I have a little outrigger out there because this is 65 inches long, and without that little outrigger, it makes it a pain in the butt to hold on to. So I'm going to time lapse this, and it won't take but a second. And you can see how I'm going to resaw every single board, all 9,000 of them, for this curved cabinets of Bembo job. All right, here we go. This blade's nice and tight, which will keep it from wandering. You want to push hard enough where you're pushing it through. If you push it too hard, your blade will wander, and you don't want your blade to wander at all. So just even pressure all throughout the whole thing. This entire thing is 3/16 of an inch. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to take this over to the joiner, join off a 32nd of an inch, which will clean this all up, and flip it back over here and do it all over again. This is how we go about making curved parts here at Mr. Kevin's Wood Shop. All right. This is some of the parts that I've resawed out. They're all 3/16 of an inch thick. My planer only goes to 1/4 inch. So how do I get this down to 1/8 inch, which I need 6 pieces of to glue together and make it 3/4 of an inch thick? What you do is you make a sled for it. And here's what I got right here. So we have a piece of ACX. You can see it's not the straightest thing in the world, but when you put this through your planer, the infeed and outfeed roller should push that down and make it work. We're going to take the widest, longest piece that we have, which is this hunk of cherry here. All we're going to do is going to put it on top of the ACX, and we're going to run it through the planer, but we have to add one thing first, and that's a stop. So I have a little piece of cherry that was left over off of one of the resaws, and it's like barely an eighth. And that's what we want for the final, is an eighth of an inch. And all we're gonna do with this piece right here is we're gonna glue it down and attach it to here so we can butt this piece into it. We're gonna measure this with the calipers and see what the actual thickness is. So both of these together is 15/16. When we go to plane this, we're gonna set the planer just barely at 15/16, and we're gonna make a pass through it and see how it cuts. And then what we wanna do is we wanna get this down till it's 13/16, which would make this piece an eighth of an inch. And every pass we do, we're gonna test it with the calipers here to make sure that we're not making these pieces smaller than an eighth of an inch, because they have to be right on the money. So every piece that we've milled so far has been face jointed on one side, just like this is. We've ran it through the bandsaw to a fat 3/16. So all these pieces should be relatively the same. So when we go to plane them, they should all be relatively the same also. So the way I'm going to attach this, I'm just going to put some glue on there and shoot some micro pins in there, just hold it in place. If you don't have a micro nailer, you could just put some glue on there and tape it in place, or you can use a CA glue, put it on there and then activate it, and it'll hold it in place. It shouldn't take much to hold this piece in. The reason we're using a planer today and not the drum sander is because one, the planer is much faster, and two, a lot of people don't have drum sanders. So I'm going to take this over to the planer, set up the planer, and we'll start planing and show you how it all works. So here's the pieces that we need to make into face frames right here. We're gonna butt them into this piece right here. You don't have to do one at a time, you can do two at a time. There's only one thing you gotta really pay attention to, is that both these pieces are centered on your hunk of wood, and that they're butted into the stop and they don't go over the top like this. And then when we feed them in, just make sure that you're holding the ass end down here so they don't come up. And here we go. And make sure we're holding these down against this stop. So the small one, you can see we hit the whole entire thing. It planed it perfectly. This longer one here, we kind of missed the edge a little bit, but these are only 3/16 right now. So we need to take these to 1/8 of an inch, and we got a whole 16th to get rid of all that. So Squeaker says if you follow the directions, you should have it right, because all these sides are completely flat because we face joined them flat before we bandsawed them. Most planers don't go below 1/4 of an inch. I've never had a planer in my life that would go down past 1/4. If there is any, let me know, and I won't buy those. So there it is, the planer sled. This works on drum sanders, time savers, and when you're making curve parts like we're doing here, that's definitely a plus. All right, everybody, watch right here as I'm putting these pieces through, and you'll see the wood kind of bow up. This is what happens using this sled when you get any piece of wood down to 1/8 of an inch. Is at 1/4 inch, everything's still kind of thick and stiff. When you get it down to 1/8 of an inch, it becomes miraculously like a noodle. And that's what's gonna happen here. These turn into like noodles when they're 1/8 inch, and they just flex. So if you don't hold your pieces down when they're this skinny, when they're 1/8 of an inch thick, your planer is gonna bow them up. It's just what happens. It bows up like this, and it wants to pop off like that. And if it does, you're gonna have a messed up piece of wood. That's all I'm gonna film now. They're all at 1/8 of an inch. They're very flexible when they're like this. So we need 6 to make a 3/4 inch face frame or a door part. And I have 7 or 8 of each kind in case I screw something up, in case something goes wrong when I'm planing these and they get blown up or whatever. It's just better to have more than you need. And Squeaker says, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. All right, here's some of the strips. And they have to go inside of here. And then you have to glue them all up. All these pieces, you have to put glue on both sides. And here's how all the pieces are gonna go together once they're glued up. I'm just gonna wrap them with shrink wrap to keep them square as I can. That's super important. And when you lay these out, you wanna lay them out as straight in a line as you possibly can. The whole name of the game is to get them in there as flat and as square as possible. Hopefully you get this damn thing plugged in and this thing on there, which takes time. That's why I'm gonna practice it. And you gotta practice this so you get it down to a science. So every now and then you have to think on your feet and do strange things that you don't think about until you actually practice them. So practicing anything you've never done before is a good idea. And I'm glad I didn't glue these up thinking I could just get them into this huge jig, get the bag wrapped around it, get it vacuum sealed up in less than 15 minutes, 20 minutes maybe tops. Yeah, that would have been a bad idea. All right, so let me show you what I did here. I basically just put a piece of 3/4 inch cherry down here, just so I could slide all of these pieces in. and I bridged it and put a piece on the top so I can lock everything in. It's got a little bit of slop, but not too much, and this is totally covered. So this is the part that's going in the bag the farthest away from me. So when they're all together and glued up, I'm gonna slide them into place down here. I got a couple of blocks in here, so when I come around, I actually butt those into the blocks. And back here I have something special, which I'm going to show you here shortly. And these little blocks here will help when it's in the bag, so I can actually pull them so they're all on that rib. So all I did is do the same thing, except this piece of wood here, I just screwed in with a 2-inch screw. It's just kind of loose in there. It's not even super tight. So I'll stuff this in, bring this over, pull these down like this, and just slide that into place and push these over into the blocks. It's pretty tight. See, it's got a little slop in there, but not too much. And what's going to happen is this whole thing's going to get vacuum sealed down. This block's going to get pushed into place, and hopefully that'll make that tight as hell. The pump's ready to go. It's sitting right here. This fitting needs to be away from a solid piece of wood or anything like that. It needs to be out in the air. Now the hard part, and I'm telling you, it's way harder than it looks, is to get this together and this thing around it and squeeze it together and get it hooked up. Okay, here we go. Success. All right, now we got a problem. I'm gonna move this slightly over because I didn't want that right on that hunk of wood. And now we just wait. So on this base down here, we have particle board that's got just eighth-inch slots in it, about an 1/8 inch deep. And what that does is it allows all the air to come all the way around the entire jig and just suck down, because the air travels through these little channels bit by bit, little bit by little bit, and it sucks that down. There's no way to beat the suction for this thing here. Yeah, it sounds pretty good. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna just take this piece of Gorilla Tape, pull this off, and put that on the end, and that'll be it. It's just sucking the tape down. That will hold all of this in a perfect radius. So a big part of doing vacuum pressing is having boards like this to actually let the air get out everywhere. Because if it was just flat like this, it would tend to want to just stop and it wouldn't suck evenly everywhere. This way it sucks really good. All right, there it is, vacuum sealed. Pretty cool, huh? Tomorrow, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna glue up all 3 of these at once, hopefully, and stick them in here just the way I just did. And this will get glued up, and you can see how perfectly smooth and round that is, right? The vacuum bag, it's amazing. All right, it's time to attempt to glue these 3 up. If it takes a little too long, I might just do 2. We're actually using the jig that we use to plank these with to glue these up. We're using the back side of it. We're using Typon 3 today, the ultimate wood glue. All right, so we're just gonna put some glue in this little bucket right here. Ah, I love the smell of glue. All right, we have some blue tape that we're gonna use. Once we get this glued together, we're gonna wrap it with shrink wrap, and then we're gonna put a strip of blue tape down the middle so that when we glue them together, they won't stick. I'm actually gonna see if I can do this to start with. A little glue down the middle. I'm gonna get glue on both sides. You don't want any spaces or gaps or anything like that. No bare spots. Wants to look just like that. And each one, I think I'm gonna just put a line down the middle of it like this. Once this glue roller gets full of glue, it'll be a lot easier to roll things out and it'll run smoothly. This, not so much. Okay, we're gonna flip this one on top of that one. You want them as square as you can get them right off the bat, and we're just gonna keep stacking them up. Gotta do this fairly quickly. I've got 15 of these I gotta do, and then get them all wrapped up and get them in the box and get them starting to suck up before time runs out and this glue dries. Okay, we got this one. Now we're gonna wrap it with shrink wrap. Put one in the middle. Okay, now that we got that, I'm gonna wipe this a little bit. All right, we're just gonna take that all the way down. Okay, there we go, we have one. Stick it in the bag, and then we'll just put one next to each other until we get it all the way in there. And it'll be amazing. I'm gonna set these two in here, go around the stops, and I'm just kind of putting this little hunk of wood on there that I showed you earlier, just to kind of hold it in place. I got one more to do.
A few moments later.
Now we're gonna see if we can get this guy in there. Glue all over the damn place in here. This is usually why I like to tape them all together. Put everything in line here. They're all relatively the same at the ends. Okay, I'm gonna reach in and pull everything over. All right, now we can slide this in. All right, this is the hard part right here. Now we just got to figure out how to get this thing started. Oh, there it goes. Man, got it. All right, here we go. Man, it's sucked in there good. So the jig has to be built pretty strong to hold up all this pressure. 1,750 pounds per square foot, I think it is, sucking down. The glue is actually oozing out of everywhere. Here, I'll take another picture and show you. So it's just pulling the glue out of everywhere. But when you're gluing up all these little tiny 1/8" pieces, you don't want to soak them with glue, you just want to put a nice film on there. Just a nice film, just so you know when you put them together, they're going to be glued up. It took me about 20 minutes to get all these things in there and set, maybe 25. If you're gluing up normal pieces of wood, like building a face frame, you wouldn't let the glue dry for 25 minutes before assembling it. This is different, because it actually will suck the glue out of every crevice known to man, including knot holes. It'll just suck it out of everywhere. So our 3 curved face frame parts have been here all night long. So we're going to pull the tape that we have over here. You hear it? And this will refill itself with air. We're going to put this over here. Oh boy, how exciting. Now we're going to try to get this off the jig. So now what we have to do is we have to pop all 3 of these loose. So here's what I'm going to unscrew this real quick. Here we go. All right, those 2 are loose. Ah, there we go. It's stuck in between the blocks. And there you go. It springs a little bit, see that? That's nothing. There's no pressure really on that whatsoever. Barely touching it with my finger, and they all are about the same. So now we're gonna take these, I'm gonna take all the tape off of them, and then we're gonna take and wrap them with a band clamp. Yeah, they're all pretty much in a line. Can't get much better than that. I'm going to take all of these, stack one on top of the other, and then wrap them. Oh, this one's not big enough. Of course, I grabbed the smallest one I have. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We wanna get the little cranker in the middle over here. I'm gonna take a spring clamp, and we're just gonna hold this in the center like that. Let's spring clamp that in place. We're just gonna pull this around until we get it where we want it. We wanna get this all centered up. So once you get a little snug, we're going to pull all of the face frames that are here into the center. Don't want it one side or the other. We want to get them all in the center. Got the band centered in there. We got the molding centered upon each other. They're all kind of square. We're just going to put a little hurt on it. Now we're going to go put this in the office and let it just sit there until we're ready to mill it. And this is how it's going to go for the next 2 or 3 weeks until I get all the parts made. This is the radius of the entire cabinet. It's this big, and it goes back into a wall. It's shaped like a pie. So all the doors and all the drawers, all the face frames sit in a line, and they're all curved like that. There's nowhere else on YouTube you're going to see somebody build a curved inset raised panel, anything, because people don't do it. I'm the only one. Prove me wrong. Yeah, curved work is a lot different than I think radius work is. And let me explain it just real quick. This is from an arch piece of molding. This is radius work, where you can take this down. I can just put a router and route a shape on both sides of this, and people will call that curve work. Oh look, I did curve work. But this is just radius work. Okay, the difference between this and this is, well, laminating it up. Got to make a jig, you got to glue it up, you got to put it in a bag. It takes forever. Somebody says, oh, I do curve work, and they show you something like this. It is a curve, but it's just basically a radius, and all you're doing is shaping a radius, which is super simple to do. This is curve work. We spent a week and a half now building a jig, resawing a bunch of cherry, sanding it to thickness, and then gluing it together and putting it together just to get to this part, which is not even close to being ready to be built. Okay, now all of you know the difference between radius work and curve work. Not that you're interested, probably nobody's watching this anyway, but yeah.
Subscribe now.
It's the boogeyman. The boogeyman is here. That's my neighbor taking in his trash can. It's very loud.
Yeah, that didn't make much sense now, did it? No.
It's still running? Son of a banana. Son of a banana. We got a lot to do, boy. A couple times, too. Will I do it better this time? Probably not. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Do the math on that. I'm going to be here a while. Magic button. There you go. Hopefully you found that different, I guess. I'm always doing different things, aren't I? I'm a little different, if you know what I mean.